You ever had $300,000 worth of equipment disappear in the middle of harvest because some busybody decided your tractor didn't belong in her view? Yeah, that happened to me. And no, I'm not exaggerating. Let me tell you how a tractor, a clipboard, and one woman's need to be right turned into the most theatrical week of my life. I live on the edge of a tidy little HOA subdivision, the kind of place where everything's trimmed and there's a meeting for everything except for me. I'm out where the fields start, boots, mud-caked, radio on, trying not to crash into the corn. For years it was fine. We kept to our sides. I farmed, they barbecued kids, chased each other under the streetlights. Simple, peaceful. Until the day Linda, let's call her Linda, got elected HOA president and discovered power feels a lot like a toy for some people. At first it was petty stuff, a rooster complaint, a note about the color of my shed, but then harvest rolled around. I had a 160-acre state-leased patch that wraps behind the neighborhood, part of a contract I hold with the state for strategic food production, boring, bureaucratic, vital stuff. So when harvest hits, you don't delay. You run your combine at dawn, you catch the weather window, you keep the schedule. I was out there humming along to an old Johnny Cash tape, son, barely up, windows cracked, thinking maybe this year I'd get through harvest without drama. I was wrong. On day 2, Linda met me at the field edge, arms crossed, clipboard like a shield. She bellowed about visual blight and lowered property values like the sun glinting off the metal on a tractor was some personal insult. I told her calmly that the land was state-leased farmland, not part of the HOA. She scoffed. Jurisdiction, she said, stops at the bushes, but sightlines apparently give her superpowers. We traded barbs. I locked up for the night, expected some passive-aggressive emails, maybe a flyer, and that would be that. Then my tractor was gone. Not moved a foot, not towed to the shed, just gone. The gravel where it sat was empty, the tracks leading out to the service road. There was a little note on the barn: abandoned machinery reported by HOA safety oversight. I laughed at first. Prank, right? But then the reality hammered down. Linda had called a tow company and convinced them to haul off a 12-ton combine during a scheduled state harvest window. Bold, stupid, and as it turns out, illegal. Turns out tampering with state-leased agricultural equipment during an active window isn't a garden variety annoyance, it's a federal-level problem. One phone call from me, and by noon I had a state inspector, a sheriff's deputy, and a transportation compliance officer standing in my field asking why an HOA had decided to commandeer essential farm equipment. Linda marched over in her neon windbreaker, proud as a general, absolutely oblivious to the level of trouble she'd just signed up for. Ma'am, can you explain why you instructed a third-party tow service to remove state-contracted equipment from active agricultural property? The inspector asked. She blinked, then puffed up and launched into a speech about neighborhood standards and unsightly machinery. He calmly handed her a note that said in polite government words, "Visual range is not legal jurisdiction." She looked like she'd been slapped with a clipboard. Then the fun part unfolded. The inspector produced a copy of a community email Linda had boasted about her decisive action, even included a smug photo of the tractor being lifted by the tow truck. That, friends, is evidence. Add to that dash cam footage from the combine. Yeah, I forgot. I had the camera on, showing Linda pointing and posing, literally narrating her own downfall. "This will show him who runs this neighborhood," she said on camera. It was cartoonish and perfect. The tow company, not licensed for heavy agricultural recovery. No permits, no insurance. They were a cousin-run repo outfit used to hauling sedans, not state-regulated equipment. So Linda hadn't just been petty. She'd orchestrated an illegal recovery of protected infrastructure. By the time the state finished their preliminary report, the tow company was facing fines, Linda was named in official paperwork, and the HOA had unwittingly dragged itself into a full-blown investigation. I didn't lift a finger, the state handled the heavy lifting, but this was only the opening salvo. Linda doubled down. 3 days after the sheriff dropped a citation at her door, she fired off a legal letter accusing me of emotional distress, visual degradation, and community disruption. She wanted me to stop farming within 500 feet of her precious hedgerow. I read that letter 3 times out loud because I thought someone had to be recording the level of theater for future generations. "There is no community peace ordinance," I told the compliance officer, and he laughed in a way that made me feel vindicated. But then Linda tried to weaponize the courts. She filed a lawsuit. That's when the real twist landed. The case landed on the desk of a regional judge I'd worked with years before on land use reform. He knew me, knew my credentials, knew the difference between property rights and petty vendettas. He tossed the suit out before the docket could breathe, and then, "This is the part I loved," advised Linda to stop any legal activity until she spoke with a lawyer who knew land designation law. Her attorney apparently took one look and quit, walked out the door. I mean, honestly, that felt like watching karma hand someone a resignation letter. Meanwhile, Linda's actions had exposed other things: embezzlement, misuse of HOA funds, shady reimbursements. Neighbors started whispering, then talking, then showing up at my gate with pies and apologies. Steve, a guy 2 doors down who'd always hated the endless meetings, became a quiet ally. The HOA called a meeting, voices rose, and by sunset, Linda's name was scrubbed from their leadership roster. She hadn't just overstepped. She'd dragged everyone into a mess they didn't sign up for. But here's where the story gets really delicious. I hadn't just leased the farmland, I'd quietly bought the access road into the subdivision a while back. It was an old farmer's parcel, went up at a quiet auction, I picked it up. Legally, it was my agricultural service road. The HOA used it by easement, and that easement had a renewal clause. I hadn't renewed. The road was mine. Now, I'm not vindictive for the sake of it, but I do appreciate poetic justice. So I filed a zoning request, paid the small fee, and renamed the road. A little green county sign went up Tractor Way. Overnight, everyone's address shifted. Packages, bank statements, pizza deliveries, Tractor Way. I watched Linda's face when she had to update everything when mail came to a mailbox that said the exact thing she tried to erase. It was perfect. She didn't give up. She fumbled a last-ditch PR festival harmony, she called it, full of food trucks, hay rides, and a bounce house that was more empty promise than spectacle. The festival was to be on the community green, accessible only by my road. So I did a thing that was annoyingly legal. I filed a use notice with the county restricting non-residential traffic during harvest, required permits for vendors, and crucially, the permits had to be approved by me. I didn't deny them, I just didn't approve them in time. Vendors arrived, trucks backed up, a bounce house guy fought his way as far as the tent before the permit sign stopped him. I, meanwhile, had organized my own Harvest Day tractor demos, kettle corn, a bluegrass band that played like they meant it. People wandered over from the paltry HOA event, followed the music, followed the smell of smoked brisket. It was welcoming, it was honest, and most importantly, it wasn't contrived. Linda tried to save face, storming the fence line with 2 reluctant board members. I smiled and told her the sheriff, who'd already eaten a turkey leg at my event, appreciated the invite. Children ran between the fields, neighbors who'd never said more than hi, now high-fived me. I even had off-duty deputies politely intercept Linda when she tried to cross into the festivities. She refused to leave at first, but a gentle choice between going back home or riding in a cruiser did wonders for pride. She chose to go home. After the festival, things settled. The HOA quietly restructured. Steve got elected interim president. People stopped sneering when they drove by the hedgerow. My mailbox, I bought a custom one hand-welded in the shape of a tiny tractor, became a neighborhood curiosity. Kids pointed, people stopped to take photos. The mail carrier grinned every time they pulled up. Linda's house went on the market, quietly sold after a few weeks at a loss, and the day the moving truck pulled away, I sat on my porch drinking lemonade and watched her drive through the gate one last time, glancing back at fields of sunflowers beginning to lean toward the light. So what's the takeaway? For me, it wasn't revenge. It wasn't shouting louder or writing vindictive letters. It was patience, documentation, and knowing your rights. And yeah, maybe a little bureaucratic creativity. When someone assumes authority they don't have, they expose their ignorance. When you document the truth, emails, dashcam footage, official leases, the truth has a way of doing the heavy lifting for you. In the end, Linda left with her pride bruised and her credibility gone. The neighborhood returned to something like calm. People who once avoided eye contact now waved. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was trying to be a neighbor who knew when to stand his ground. And the road sign Tractorway still makes me smile every time I drive past it. So I'll leave you with this. What would you do if someone in your community decided they could rewrite the rules because they liked the sound of their own voice? Is it better to fight fire with fire, or to build a gate, get the county to install a sign, and let the paperwork do the talking? Tell me your take. And if you've got a story where someone tried to tow your dignity away, share it. I want to hear how your Tractorway turned out.